A pop idol, usually young, usually pretty, always talented, and usually white, comes up, gains a massive following, and then grows up in front of us. This leads to a period where they are dealing with their own sexuality, and all that entails. And that period is when they become a massive question mark. That's followed by another period, sometimes a few. But what they usually end up being remembered for is that period where they were, for a time, trashy. Okay, so Madonna has to come first because she's the one that both set the tone and then definitely set the path. And she's different than most of these because when she arrives on the scene, she's already an adult. She is super talented. Anyone questioning Madonna's talent just needs to go back and look at or listen to Borderline or any of the songs that Dance into the Groove. She has major talent. She understands not only the vocal side, but a presentation side that gives her voice and her presentation a not just an edge, but a defining core that can always be found, no matter what period of Madonna you're listening to. You're getting Madonna and you know it. And her early image was something along the lines of provocative. I mean, she had the lace gloves, crucifixes, the leather and rubber bracelets, lots of layers, exposed lingerie, the bare midriff, teased out hair. Like, it was crazy. And when we got to Like a Virgin, she was the star at that point. And there's this sort of contradiction happening there. Sort of a dirty cleanness, I guess is the best way to put it. It's this, I hate to say it, but there's the Madonna whore concept. That in a way she played at the same time, at the same weight. And she recognized doing them together had more power than doing each of them individually. And brilliant. She, of course, made a major mark with the wedding dress at the first MTV Video Music Awards in 1984. The question of purity versus obscenity, and then using both of those concepts to build a stage persona. And having known a few people who worked for her, it was not much of a persona, it was just her. It's when you get to Like a Prayer, which I personally find to be the absolute most beautiful video she ever did. She also looked the best in that one. Just absolutely gorgeous. I love that dress, the red one. But she's using Catholic imagery. She's playing on ideas of race and sanctity, as well as, she's just made a melodramatic video that is incredible. It's one of the best videos of the 80s. And as it keeps going, she's just releasing great music. She's building a persona that is so strong. She's reinventing herself a little bit every time. Until you get to 1992. And there you get two things. You get Exotica, or Erotica, one of my favorite of her albums, erotic, erotic, and the book Sex. She has firmly based herself into a sexual forward figure at that point. And people have been saying that she'd been doing that for years, and I think she kind of just said, hey, look, this is what I could have been doing, and you might have been right at that point. And that book, which was photographed by Stephen Maisel, is just great. It really is. I bought it for a friend of mine, and I got to read it with them, and it was just... It's remarkable photography. In a time when people like Maisel and Helmut Newton were doing just amazing sexually charged stuff. And of course, at that point, massive backlash happened. And there's a rule, at least there was at that point, about pop star sexuality. And when you go over a line, people just respond negatively to you. And it's possible that you could say that she was purposely pushing into that edge. I think that's probably the case. I also think there's something actually very interesting here, that once Erotica came out and was a super solid album, it's probably my second favorite of her albums. She found herself worried about permanently being in that mode, that state. So she went into another direction. She, of course, went into doing things like the Gautier-inspired clothing with the cone bra. Lots of sort of reinvention of herself. Ray of Light, of course, bringing her back to that sort of jeans and t-shirt mom rock. Mom pop, I guess. Really interesting note there. But she had built a myth. And she had also glammed up really well. And let's avoid her acting. There might be other episodes on that. But she's really the forerunner for the reinventable pop star. And specifically the one that leans into the sexuality. And we're going to go to, next, Christina Aguilera. My favorite of the 1999 pop musicians to come out, which really only gives you three. It gives you Beyonce, it gives you Britney, and it gives you Christina. And when she came out with Genie in a Bottle, it's just brilliant. It really is. It is one of the best radio songs of the 1990s. And when you have this time, when you have things like the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney, Christina, they're all sort of giving you this very streamlined, highly produced music. And Christina was vocally the most talented of all of them. I will never say these women aren't talented. They're all talented. But in a way, they're being presented sort of, what are the popular girls in high school like? This is one of the reasons why I think a lot of the Disney Channel things with the musician star as them really work, is because they expose this idea that we want to think the pretty girl cheerleader is actually the most talented woman in the world when we're in school. And when you look at Christina's voice, which is huge, it never quite matched her presentation at that point. But as, of course, she was in her late teens. I think she was 18 when Genie in a Bottle came out. It might have even been 17. But she sort of moved out of a phase where she could be playing the most popular girl in the high school who happens to be one of the most amazing singers you ever hear, and moved into being a young woman who is looking at her sexuality. And more than that. Because in 2002, Stripped came out. And that title, not subtle. Just ain't. It's a good album. I wouldn't say it's great. But this idea that a pop idol has to be sort of polished and clean has been stripped away. Nothing exposes that more than Dirty. And especially the video. Because it's all sweat and leather and grime and boxing and body and underground club chaos and piercings and assless chaps. Well, if they're assless, they're chaps to begin with. It's also a really good song. She looked like she had seen what a dystopian future would be for her original, I don't want to say identity, but presentation as a pop star. And if Madonna had gone a long way with Sex and Erotica, Christina went way beyond. And she went not into a leather and lace concept, but instead into a, it's 2 a.m. and you're fucking in the bathroom of a club. And it worked. This idea for her worked. And she was trying to define herself. And I think she actually found that to be less her than it really was. She's feeling out the edges of a box. A lot of performers are. And she got the close end and she went to the far end. But after that, she was so much more interesting to me. When she rediscovered a sort of vintage styling. And Back to Basics was great. This whole sort of going back and looking at sort of a glamour. It worked for her. And when you have the type of talent that would have gotten you noticed in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s in the mainstream, and she absolutely does, you can do that. Now, of course, she did go a little bit different into Bionic in 2010, which was not great. But what she managed to do after that was merge herself back into an idea of what she is as a performer and make that a big honkin' deal in the culture. And her time on all of the shows she ended up doing was great. I think she's the most interesting of all of them who sort of took this path. But the one where it's not as clean is for Britney Spears. Hit Me Baby One More Time is absolutely an anthem. And in that music video, more than anything else, that video defined the idea of what a pop star in the late 90s, early 2000s was going to be. It explicitly calls out the schoolgirl thing. It explicitly gives you this idea of the cute girl who is really talented. Britney can sing. People overlook that, I think. She's a good dancer. She's a great singer. And part of that is on purpose. Because if you attach to the talent instead of the ability, in other words, the image rather than the product, you build a sort of connection that just lasts. And that's really important. People are more likely to connect with you as a person than they are as a provider of a service. And she provides a service. Her music, every song, is a product, a service. It makes your life a little better for a while. But she became so ingrained. More so, I think, than any of the others. I think more so than... Definitely more so than Christina. Probably more so than Jessica Simpson, Mandy Moore. We latched on to Britney because she defined something very clearly. And Oops, I Did It Again, another great song. But in 2001, I'm a Slave for You came out. And that's the turn. And perhaps even more a turn was when she was dancing with the snake at the VMAs. But in 2003 was the moment. And this is the thing that I think gets overlooked a lot. 2003 Video Music Awards. Britney, Christina, and Madonna. Not coincidentally, the first three I'm covering in this episode. And Madonna is dressed as a groom, and Britney and Christina are the brides. It's sort of set up like it's supposed to be a generational transfer. I am Madonna. I am giving the fruit of my musical loins to the world so that I might ride off into the sunset. That isn't how it happened, but it sure looks like it. And of course, Britney kisses Madonna. And Christina also kisses Madonna. And many a boy became a man. But apparently the camera cut away faster for Christina. Probably because they wanted to catch Justin Timberlake's reaction. But the thing is, at that point, they remember Britney's kiss with Madonna because she's still in her innocence phase. Well, Christina has transferred out of that. Was it a stunt? Specifically to garner this sort of thing to allow her to transition out? Maybe. But it definitely, when you think of it, you think of Britney and not Christina. And there are other reasons for that. By 2007, Britney has her meltdown. The shaved head, the custody battle, paparazzi, uh, beating the thing with the umbrella, the conservatorship. TMZ and all of those groups that have traded on celebrity breakdowns maybe didn't come out because of Britney, but they were definitely fed by it for a long time. And this is where the sort of the trashy part comes in because of her relationship with Kevin Federline. And one of the ways you can tell something like this is really impacting the culture is how is a performer presented on Saturday Night Live? And the Britney Kevin stuff on SNL was brutal. I remember the line, well, Kevin told me I couldn't get pregnant if we did it in the booty, but every time he did it in the booty, I got pregnant. You know, she's being presented as not only trashy, but as, and lowbrow, of course, but beyond that, she's being presented as like a hick. And it was ugly. Of course, in 2008, the conservatorship began. And then Womanizer came out in 2008, which was great. And by the time she's doing her Vegas residency, she's back, maybe not glam, but she's getting there. But she's super back to a mode that is not seen as this sort of lower class. And that's when the Free Britney movement happens, and I love it. Crazy Britney had a time. Revived Britney has a time. And she's had some slip-ups, of course. But Toxic is excellent. I just need to say that. One of the more interesting ones is Miley Cyrus, Disney child star who became so much smarter than anyone ever gave her credit for. Because she started as Hannah Montana, already a concept that is about duality. How do the superstar and the person who is the superstar sort of interact? This started in 2006. And say what you will about the Disney machine, it works. It does good stuff. And it presented Miley in a way that was so intelligent. And in her early stuff, she's very much, your regular teen rock stuff. Party in the USA in 2009 is sort of the bridge. Sort of where you start to see that she's making a turn. Can't Be Tamed turns it out, and you can see, oh, this is going somewhere different. But when 2013 comes, and you get Wrecking Ball, you get the short platinum hair, the tongue out all the time, latex, and especially her performance on the VMAs. And she's gone for sort of party trash, I guess could be the way to put it. a little bit less grimy than Christina went, but it's still there. And of course, you were getting things like her twerking. And she's doing. There's some who say that she was doing bad taste on purpose, and I can see that concept. Ultimately, how does the most polished teen princess go and become something more? Well, by going all the other way. But I always found her stuff to be less about sexuality and more about definition. And Miley is a hell of a talent. I'll take Miley over pretty much anyone when it comes to more contemporary. Well, let's go with her ultimate contemporary, Taylor Swift. Taylor, also hugely talented, great songwriter. I actually think she's a better songwriter than a performer. That's just me. I'll take Miley over her any day. Part of that is Miley is more interested in becoming a performer than by being a great singer and songwriter. This is the argument between Rudy Vallée and Al Jolson. That's neither here nor there. Neither of them are trashy. Actually, Al Jolson is super trashy. Never mind. Even having her as a part of the whole blurred lines with Robin Thicke thing, uh, super into the zone. She gets it. What's interesting is that she blew up her Disney time, more or less. But she did it while her fans from her Disney time were still young enough to be, I wouldn't say offended, but to be shocked by it. She was pretty narrow in her margins. And when she started to just lean into her more covers that she didn't think, stuff like Call Me, her Fleetwood Mac covers are great. And of course, Jolene. Her Jolene is wonderful. I really believe. And I know Dolly Parton has said it's her favorite of the covers that she's heard. Her voice is an adult. She still has a youth to her. She's still relatively young. But she doesn't feel like she has been in front of us for 20 years yet. Also, she gave Backpack Kid a job. She understands how to break herself down, and particularly how to break down her own image. And what she's doing now is great. I think she is probably going to give us a really nice set of things in about 5 years that we never thought were coming. I want to go to the odd case here, which is one of two, but it's Lady Gaga. And Gaga's really interesting because she started with this idea that she was all the influences of New York. Do not come at me with any idea that Gaga was not particularly presenting a vision of New York club life to the rest of the world. Just Dance is 100%. But I think on the other hand, her music, while of course always sort of edgy, the Poker Face, of course, is my personal favorite. But once you got to Fame and the Fame Monster, they're less collections of signals and more statement songs. And I love that. She's always been interested in not only art, but kitsch and fashion. Though I find who she follows in her fashion is interesting. I never felt that Gaga was trashy per se. Even when in something like Alejandro, in which the video, certainly sexually charged, I never thought it got into trashy. There's way too much Calvin Klein for that. But she did something interesting. She at one point left the whole sort of Gaga thing, and there were a lot of people who were kept on doing it after her. But she went 100% into glam. She went in to Tony Bennett territory. She glammed up incredibly well. And again, Gaga is a fantastic performer. Absolutely glorious. I love her. I think Lady Gaga's voice is super solid. Her understanding and her piano playing, her understanding of how to ring her music is phenomenal. Of course, there's the meat dress, which, of course, the MTV Video Music Awards are a central topic here because they're designed for trashiness. MTV was designed for trashiness. Why do you think it gave us The Real World and Road Rules and Jackass and on and on and on? Half of this series will be about MTV in one way or another. I think Gaga was about spectacle until she became about glamour. And the Tony Bennett period was amazing. Anytime I saw the two of them together, and I saw a super special, 3-screen wraparound of the two of them, where you could tell not only the genuine affection for Tony, and the affection that he had for her, but the fact that she was trying to live up to Tony Bennett. And she absolutely did. So she's a little different, but it sort of had the same path. She just kind of skipped that first part. The best counterexample, and again, also kind of went through a similar thing, but different, is Billie Eilish. I consider Billie Eilish to be one of my favorite performers right now. I think that the song Lunch, insanely good. NDA, great song. But where she started in, 2015, 2016, you could almost say she was treading in the fields where Lorde did. Lorde never went through a trashy phase, even if you listen to her lyrics. But Billie's sort of early image was very different. Because she presented herself early in the huge shirt, the long shorts, the baggy pants, and she wasn't coming off as a sort of a traditional pop star, which was cool. I loved that. Again, super talented. And she never really had the trashy phase. But then 2021 hits, and she's on the cover of Vogue. And her shoot in there is absolutely glamorous. It's amazing. It's one of my favorites. And I like Vogue a lot. And nowadays, she still does the sort of the look you expect, but she also, you'll see her at the Met Gala. You'll see her more going into a traditional fold. And then she releases a song like Lunch in 2024, which is amazing. It should be more of a queer anthem today than any other song I can think of. And why is she the ending note? Because she proves that the machine is still running. It's just about costume change. Madonna went along a path that was perhaps a speed bump. Christina was a mountain. Brittany was a mountain range. Miley was a devastated building. Gaga was all over the place. And Billie Eilish was just sort of watching and doing things that ended up following a similar, but not the same path. And one of the ways I think I read that it could be looked at is what role the culture gives women in the spotlight. And there's a path to it. You start as the virgin, you become the princess, then the rebel, the freak, the monster, the sad girl, the grown woman. We're supposed to think that's the way it goes. And a lot of this, of course, happens because of marketing. Some of these women are absolutely making their own choices. Some of them are having these choices forced upon them to a degree. Some of them make the switches because they're finally breaking out of the paths that have been set for them. And I don't think much of it is cynical. I don't think it is a cash grab always. Do I think it works as a cash grab? You're damn right. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's almost always white girls. Does it happen with African American performers? African American women performers? Yeah, but in a different way. And that'll be something I'll talk about later. It's a lot bigger, more complicated series of discussions there. So next time, we're going to stick around a little bit of outrage and talk about a stand-up comic who built an entire empire out of being politically incorrect. And a guy who became a superstar who came crashing down super hard, but also left behind one of my favorite movies, and it's not a dirty little secret that I love The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. Because we're going to be talking about Andrew Dice Clay next time. Thank you for listening to Trashy. I'm Chris Garcia. Remember, if you hate yourself for loving it, the odds are it's trashy. Have a good night.
They madness to the hungry crowd. Keep the conversation shallow and loud. Trashy. 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 The noise is rising high. Trashy. Trashy. Under a plastic sky. Trashy. The bargain for the soul is spinning out of control. Trashy. 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 Trashy.